Mark Coleman's hand rested on the manila folder. The agency director slid it back across the table toward him, the movement deliberate and final. Emma's photograph stared up from the paper-clipped corner, almond-shaped eyes, a smile that seemed to know something the rest of the world didn't. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh white light. "We don't recommend this match," the director said. Her voice was measured, professional. She tapped the folder with one manicured fingernail. Her medical needs alone would overwhelm most families. "Have you considered a different profile? We have several healthy infants who—" Mark's hand stayed on the folder. Jennifer squeezed his other hand beneath the table, her grip tight enough to leave marks. The conference room smelled like carpet cleaner and coffee that had been sitting too long. Outside the sealed window, traffic moved in blurred streams of color. "This is the third agency," Jennifer said. Her tone carried something that hadn't been there at the first two meetings. Something sharper, more determined. "They've all said the same thing." The director folded her hands. "I understand your frustration." Her smile was kind but distant. "But there's a reason for that consensus. A child with Down syndrome, especially from institutional care, presents significant challenges. Speech delays, heart defects, behavioral issues from attachment disorder." Her eyes moved between them. "You're both working full-time. No other children, no experience with special needs parenting." "I teach special education," Jennifer said. "That's different from 24/7 care." The director opened another folder. "Let me show you some other options. Children who would be a better fit for first-time adoptive parents." Mark stood. The metal chair legs scraped against linoleum. "Thank you for your time," he said. Each word came out clipped, controlled. "We'll be in touch." They walked to the parking lot without speaking. The autumn sun was too bright, too cheerful for how Jennifer felt. She reached the car and stopped, her hand on the door handle. Water blurred the reflections in the window glass. "3 agencies, Mark. 3 professionals all telling us we're making a mistake." Mark moved around the car and pulled her into his arms, her face against his shoulder. The parking lot stretched empty around them, just endless rows of painted lines and parked vehicles catching the afternoon light. "Are they right?" she whispered into his shirt. "Are we crazy?" He tightened his grip on her. His chin rested on top of her head. "I don't know," he said. The honesty stung, but it was all he had. "I just know I can't stop thinking about her. That photo. Those eyes. It's been 3 months since we first saw her profile." "Me too." Jennifer pulled back, wiping her face with the heels of her hands. "Every night I see her in that orphanage." She looked up at him. "What if we're the only ones willing to see past the diagnosis?" The drive home passed in silence. Their neighborhood appeared the same as always. Neat lawns, basketball hoops, children's bikes abandoned in driveways. They'd bought this house 7 years ago, right after the 3rd round of fertility treatments failed. A 4-bedroom colonial. For the family they'd never had. Jennifer made dinner while Mark sat at the kitchen table, Emma's folder open in front of him. The casserole dish clinked as she set it down. Steam rose, carrying the smell of cheese and tomatoes. They blessed the food and began eating. Finally, Mark spoke. "What did you feel that day, at the church event, when you met that family who'd adopted?" Jennifer set down her fork and stared at her plate. "I felt like I'd been living in black and white, and someone just showed me color." Her words were barely above a whisper. "That little boy, the one with Down syndrome. He was so joyful, so present, and his mother looked at him like he was the greatest gift she'd ever received." "And you felt something?" Jennifer nodded, like God was speaking, not in words, just this deep knowing. She looked at Mark. "Like everything we've been through, all the failed treatments, the grief, the empty bedrooms, it was leading somewhere. To someone." She paused. "To Emma." Mark reached across the table, their fingers intertwined. "I feel it too," he said. "I'm terrified. I don't know what we're doing, but I can't shake this. Then we find a different way, Jennifer's jaw said. If these agencies won't help us, we find one that will. They interceded together that night with raw, honest words offered into darkness. The kind of conversation with God that admits fear while choosing faith anyway. Outside their bedroom window, suburban life continued. Garage doors opening, dogs barking, the distant sound of someone's television. Inside, two people knelt beside their bed and surrendered their plan for whatever plan was unfolding. The next Sunday, they sat in their church's small group meeting. 8 people in the Hendersons' living room. Coffee mugs balanced on knees. Bible study materials scattered across the ottoman. When it came time for requests, Jennifer's words came out unsteady. We need wisdom, she said, and courage. She told them about Emma, about the 3 agencies, about the conviction they couldn't ignore. The room grew still. People leaned forward. Pastor Mike was there. He set down his coffee. I know a family, he said. They adopted a little girl with special needs from Ukraine. Let me connect you. I can help with the home study, offered Rachel, a social worker. My husband's firm does pro bono legal work, said Melissa. International adoption sometimes needs that. The room filled with offerings. Not just intercession, but tangible help. Mark felt his chest expand. The pressure that had been building there for weeks finally releasing. They weren't alone. The family Pastor Mike connected them with invited Mark and Jennifer over on a Tuesday evening. The house was cheerful chaos. Toys everywhere, children's artwork covering the refrigerator, a little girl with Down syndrome dancing to music only she could hear. Her name was Sophie. She was 6. Sophie's mother, Karen, made tea while Sophie showed Jennifer every stuffed animal she owned. Mark and Karen's husband, David, sat at the kitchen table. David was direct. It's the hardest thing we've ever done, he said. Sophie came to us at 4. She didn't speak English. She'd been institutionalized her whole life. He stirred sugar into his tea. The first year, we questioned everything. Whether we'd made the right choice, whether we were equipped, whether love was enough. And now? Mark asked. David smiled. Now I can't imagine our family without her. She's taught us more about joy, about presence, about what really matters than any other experience in our lives. He looked toward the living room, where Sophie was wrapping Jennifer in a blanket, declaring her a princess. The diagnosis isn't who she is. It's just part of her story. Karen joined them. She set down a plate of cookies Sophie had helped make. Lumpy, over-sugared, perfect. The agencies will try to protect you from the hard parts, she said. But they can't predict love. They can't measure the ways a child will change you for the better. She looked at Mark directly. If you feel called, trust that. God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. Mark and Jennifer drove home without speaking, but this silence was different. It carried possibility instead of defeat. When they pulled into their driveway, Jennifer turned to Mark. I want to try again, she said. With a different agency. One more time. Mark pulled out his phone. He'd been researching. There's a faith-based agency in Pennsylvania, he said. They specialize in special needs international adoptions. They have a 98% success rate. Call them, Jennifer said. Tomorrow. The social worker from New Hope Adoptions sat in their living room 3 weeks later. Her name was Theresa. She didn't wear a suit. She drank the coffee Jennifer offered and actually ate 2 of the cookies. Emma's file sat on the coffee table between them. Tell me why her, Theresa said. Not in general. Specifically. Why this child? Mark and Jennifer looked at each other. Jennifer spoke first. Because when I look at her photo, I see my daughter, not a diagnosis, not a set of challenges. My child. She paused. I know that probably sounds naive. Theresa smiled. It sounds like every parent I've ever worked with who successfully completed a special needs adoption. She opened Emma's file. Let's talk reality. Emma is 3. She's been institutionalized since birth. She has Down syndrome. Her medical records indicate a heart defect that will require surgery within the first year post-adoption. She's nonverbal. She has significant developmental delays. Jennifer's training as a special education teacher kicked in. What kind of heart defect? Are we talking ASD? VSD? Will she need open heart surgery or catheterization? Theresa looked impressed. VSD, likely surgical repair. She'll need a pediatric cardiologist on her team immediately? I work with a pediatric ICU nurse at church, Jennifer said. She's already offered to consult. Theresa made notes. She asked about their finances, their support system, their understanding of attachment disorder and trauma-informed parenting. She pressed into difficult territory without flinching. But she also didn't discourage. When she left 2 hours later, she paused at the door. I'll be honest with you, she said. This won't be easy. But if you're committed, we'll walk this with you. Emma needs a family. You want to be that family. Let's make it happen. The paperwork began in earnest. Mountains of it. Background checks, medical clearances, financial statements, references, home study appointments. Jennifer filled out forms at the kitchen table every evening after school. Mark reviewed documents before bed, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. Their comfortable suburban life transformed into a bureaucratic marathon. Then came the financial reality. Theresa called on a Tuesday morning. Total adoption cost, $35,000, she said. That includes agency fees, Bulgarian government fees, travel, Emma's medical evaluations, post-placement services. She paused. How much do you have saved? $8,000, Mark said. His stomach dropped to his feet. You'll need to raise $27,000. In about 6 months if you want to travel before next winter. Mark hung up. He stared at the number he'd written down. $27,000. 6 months. He taught accounting. He understood numbers. This was impossible. Jennifer came home from school and found him sitting at the kitchen table, calculator in front of him, running scenarios that all ended the same way. We can't, he said. The numbers don't work. She set down her school bag and pulled out a chair. Her face carried that expression he'd come to recognize, the one that meant she'd already decided. Then, we ask for help, she said. Pride rose in him. We can't ask people for... Yes, we can. She cut him off. This is our daughter, we ask. The next Sunday, they stood before their congregation. Mark's hands wouldn't stop moving. He gripped Emma's photo. Jennifer explained their journey. Pastor Mike stood beside them. The church has an opportunity, the pastor said, to participate in something beautiful. A child needs a home. This family needs support. Let's be the body of Christ to them. The response started slowly. An envelope in their mailbox that Monday with $200 and a note, for Emma. A check for $500 from Mark's coworker who wasn't even religious. I just believe in what you're doing, the note said. Then it accelerated. The church organized a yard sale. Jennifer's second-grade students had a readathon and raised $800. Someone anonymously donated $1,000. Then $2,000. Then $5,000. Mark tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet, water blurring the numbers. 3 months in, they hit $18,000. 4 months, $23,000. They were close. So close. Then Emma's updated medical file arrived. The heart defect was more serious than initially documented. She would need open heart surgery within 6 months of adoption. The surgery alone would cost $80,000 in the U.S. Their insurance would cover it, but they'd need to be prepared for complications, for a longer hospitalization, for the reality that this sweet girl in the photo might need intensive care immediately upon arrival. Jennifer read the report in their bedroom and handed it to Mark without speaking. He scanned the medical terminology, the surgical recommendations, the risk factors. The paper rattled in his grip. "This is bigger than we thought," he said. She nodded. Dampness tracked down her face. "Do we stop?" Each word scraped his throat. Jennifer looked at Emma's photo on their nightstand, the one they'd framed, the one they interceded over every night. She shook her head. "We're already her parents. This is what parents do. They show up for the scary parts." That Sunday, they updated the church and shared the medical news, admitted their fear. Rachel stood up from her pew, moisture streaming down her cheeks. "My daughter had open heart surgery at 2, she said. She's 17 now and captain of her soccer team. You can do this. We'll help you do this." The church surrounded them with intercession, hands on their shoulders, voices lifted in petition. Mark felt carried by something beyond his own strength. This wasn't just their journey anymore. It belonged to their community. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a check for $12,000. The memo line said, "For Emma's heart surgery. For her future. For love." Mark called Jennifer at work. His words wouldn't form properly. "We have it," he managed. "All of it. More than we need." She asked her principal for the rest of the day off. She came home and found Mark in the kitchen, the check still in his hand. They clung to each other and wept, grateful sobs, overwhelming and impossible and miraculous all at once. The Bulgarian government took another 2 months to process their paperwork. Their travel date was pushed back once, then twice. Mark had to request unpaid leave from work. Jennifer's school year ended. They waited and packed and repacked. They prepared a bedroom with soft colors and sensory-friendly toys. They studied Bulgarian phrases. They watched videos about attachment and trauma. Finally, in late October, clearance arrived. They flew out on a Tuesday. The journey stretched long, connecting flights through Frankfurt, cramped airplane seats, time zones blurring together. They landed in Sofia in darkness. Rain hammered the taxi windows on the drive to the orphanage town. The orphanage itself was stark, Soviet-era concrete, paint peeling from metal radiators, the smell of institutional food and bleach. A woman with kind eyes but formal manner led them down a hallway with pale green walls. Children's voices echoed from distant rooms. Their footsteps sounded too loud on worn linoleum. They waited in a room with mismatched plastic chairs and a barred window. Gray November light filtered through. Jennifer's hands wouldn't be still, smoothing her skirt, touching her necklace, gripping Mark's fingers. The door opened. An aide carried in a little girl in oversized donated clothes. Emma. She was more delicate than they'd imagined. More fragile. She didn't look at them. Her eyes stayed fixed on some middle distance. Her body carried with the careful stillness of a child who'd learned not to expect much. Jennifer knelt on the cold floor and pulled the stuffed bear from her bag, the one they'd brought from home, soft and yellow and smelling like their life. She offered it with an outstretched hand that wouldn't stop moving. Emma's eyes flicked to the bear, then away, then back. Long seconds passed. Then her little hand reached out, touched the soft fur, drew back, reached again, finally took it. She pulled it against her chest and looked at Jennifer for the first time. "Hello, sweet girl," Jennifer whispered in Bulgarian. "We're so happy to meet you." Emma didn't respond, but she clutched the bear. And she didn't look away. They visited Emma 3 times over the next 3 days. Each visit she was slightly less guarded, On the third day, she let Mark pick her up. Her body was rigid at first, unsure. Then she leaned against his shoulder. It felt like a gift, like trust taking its first breath. The court date arrived on a Thursday morning. They stood in a stark government building before a judge, who reviewed their paperwork with careful efficiency. He asked questions through an interpreter. Why this child? Why from Bulgaria? Did they understand the medical needs? The developmental challenges? Mark answered. Because she's ours. Because every child deserves a family. Because we have the resources and support to help her thrive. The judge looked at them for a long moment. Then he signed the papers. Emma Katerina Coleman, he read aloud, congratulations. They were parents. The flight home was brutal. Emma sobbed. Deep, terrified sounds from a child leaving the only world she'd ever known. Jennifer walked the airplane aisles, rocking her, singing softly. Strangers offered sympathetic smiles. A flight attendant brought warm milk. By the time they landed, Emma was limp with exhaustion, clinging to Jennifer's neck, her whole body quivering. The first weeks at home were harder than anything they prepared for. Emma didn't sleep through the night. She screamed if they left her sight. She wouldn't eat most foods. She smelled everything. Clothes, furniture, food, trying to make sense of this alien world. She didn't respond to her name. She rarely made eye contact. At night, she rocked herself in the crib they'd carefully prepared, her compact form moving back and forth in the darkness. At 2 a.m. on day 10, Jennifer sat in the rocking chair by Emma's window. The little girl was finally asleep in her arms, but only after 2 hours of anguished sounds. Blue nightlight glow fell across them both. The suburban street outside was silent, except for a distant dog barking. Jennifer's arms ached down to the bone. Her eyes burned. Every muscle hurt. Did we make a mistake? She whispered to the darkness. Are the agencies right? Mark appeared in the doorway. He'd heard her. He crossed the room and knelt beside the chair, his hand finding her shoulder, his other hand resting on Emma's back. Listen, he said softly. She's breathing. She's here. She's safe. That's what matters. I don't know if I can do this. Jennifer's words fractured. I'm so spent. You don't have to know. He leaned his forehead against her shoulder. We just have to do the next thing. Then the next. 1 hour at a time. They interceded together there in the blue light with raw, desperate words, the kind that admits defeat while choosing to keep going anyway. Emma slept on, unaware she was being lifted up by 2 people who were learning what love actually required. The church community became their lifeline. Rachel organized a meal train. Dinners appeared on their doorstep every night for 6 weeks. Melissa and her husband took Emma for 2 hours every Saturday, so Mark and Jennifer could sleep. The pediatric ICU nurse, Linda, came over weekly to check Emma's development and reassure them that attachment took time. Slowly, incrementally, Emma began to emerge. At week 3, she smiled for the first time at the dog next door through the fence. At week 5, she reached for Jennifer instead of away. At 2 months, she slept through the night. At 3 months, during a particularly difficult morning, when Jennifer was fighting back water while Emma fought breakfast, the little girl suddenly reached up and touched Jennifer's damp cheek. Mama, she said, her first word, uncertain, questioning, but there. Jennifer caught her breath. Yes, she said, wetness streaming now. Yes, baby. Mama. Emma patted her face. Mama, she repeated, more certain. The heart surgery happened when Emma was 4 years old. They'd waited, monitoring, building her strength first. The night before surgery, they sat on her bed with picture books, showing what would happen. Emma listened, her eyes serious. her hand gripping the yellow bear that had come with her from Bulgaria. The surgery took 7 hours. Mark and Jennifer sat in the waiting room with half their church. People took turns sitting with them, interceding, bringing coffee, just being present. When the surgeon finally appeared, weary but smiling, and said the repair was successful, the waiting room erupted in subdued celebration. Emma's recovery was rocky. 2 weeks in pediatric ICU. Another week on the cardiac floor. But she fought. She was stronger than anyone expected. And through it all, she knew she wasn't alone. Mama and Dada were there. Always there. 5 years later, Emma is 8. She attends integrated classroom at Jennifer's school. She reads at a first-grade level. She speaks in full sentences, often grammatically creative, but always clear in meaning. Her favorite things are music, dancing, hugging everyone she meets, and telling anyone who will listen about her yellow bear named Sophia. She has friends. She has a room filled with books and art supplies and clothes she picks out herself. She has a mother who understands learning differences, and a father who thinks she hung the moon. She has a church family who watched her grow from a frightened 3-year-old to a joyful child who lights up any room she enters. Mark and Jennifer lead an adoption support group now at their church. They meet monthly with families considering adoption or in the early stages of bringing children home. They tell the truth about the hard parts. They celebrate the victories. 3 families from their church have adopted in the 5 years since Emma came home. One of them specifically, because they watched Emma's transformation and thought, if God can do that for the Colemans, maybe He has a child for us too. Jennifer often thinks about those agency meetings, the manila folder sliding across the table, the professional warnings. She doesn't blame those workers anymore. They were trying to protect, trying to prepare, working from statistics and experience. But they couldn't have known Emma. They couldn't have predicted how a little girl labeled too difficult would teach her parents about joy, about presence, about what actually matters. They couldn't have measured the ways she would expand their understanding of love itself. Sometimes the very thing the world calls impossible is exactly where God shows up most clearly. The Coleman family learned that love isn't about being qualified or prepared. It's about being willing. Emma didn't need perfect parents. She needed faithful ones. And in opening their arms to receive her, they received far more than they ever imagined they could give.